Hello, and welcome back to another video of me talking into the abyss, which is totally fine because that's basically what you do when you're journaling, right? That's how I'm thinking about this channel. I do appreciate the people that are watching and the people that continue to come back to these videos. That's pretty cool. I have 7 subscribers. I just checked before I started shooting this video, so I do personally think that that's pretty cool, even though it's a super small number. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot lately about how making decisions can feel really difficult, mainly because for the last year, I've had to make a lot of rapid fire, pretty substantial decisions in my life. And I don't just mean those types of decisions, like huge decisions, like changing careers or ending relationships or moving somewhere else. Even the smaller decisions, they can trap us in these endless loops where we keep researching and comparing and imagining every possible outcome. And at least I had always told myself that I was basically waiting on clarity. Like if I were to get more information, right? We tell ourselves that we're waiting on clarity, like we're going to get that one day. But I'm really starting to think that indecision is often an attempt to keep every possible life alive. And I want to talk about that. As long as you haven't chosen, every future still feels available to you. You could still take that job. You could still move to that city. You could still start that other business that you're thinking about. You can still write that book instead of write this book with the idea that you have, or become a completely different person. But you can't become someone without giving up the people that you could have been. You can't write the book without at least putting on hold the idea that you had for the other book. And when you're a kid, most of your important decisions are made for you. Other people, your parents or your guardians, other people decide where you live. They decide where you go to school. They decide what your schedule looks like. They decide what you're responsible for. They choose your religion for you. They decide whether or not you go to church every Sunday. And then you grow up and suddenly you're given all of this freedom. But freedom comes with something much less exciting, and that's responsibility. You have to start choosing. And when no one else is making the decision for you, you become responsible for whatever follows. If you choose incorrectly, you can't blame your parents. You can't blame your circumstances or whoever put you on that path. You're the one who chose it. Indecision has this hidden appeal because it preserves a kind of innocence. And this is something that I saw a lot in my own life. And since I deconstructed this in my own life, I see it a lot in other people. I don't go up and blatantly say like, "Hey, you're not you're playing the victim here," but you start to see it when you realize that this indecision is almost like a victim mentality. If you never consciously choose a direction, you can tell yourself that whatever happens isn't your responsibility. You can say that life happened to you. Your circumstances decided. Other people decided. You were just the one that carried along the momentum of what was already happening. And as long as you haven't chosen, nothing can officially be your fault. But that innocence is mostly an illusion, and the only one that it's affecting is you. Refusing to choose doesn't remove your responsibility, it only hands the decision to fear, circumstance, and time. And it can protect you from feeling responsible, but it can't protect you from experiencing the consequences. Like that's going to happen either way. And like I said, I used to think I was waiting for clarity, but looking back, I think I was waiting for a decision that just wouldn't make me responsible for anything. I wanted an option with no risk, no sacrifice, and no regret. I, I, I didn't know that I was intentionally doing these things, but in the reality of it all, that's what I wanted. I wanted to choose the perfect option, and that doesn't exist. I think the best way to think about decision is if we go back to like the Latin word where decide comes from. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but uh, decidere, decidere, something like that. But it means to cut off. And that tells us that real decision cuts away alternatives. Taking one career means not discovering where another one would have led. Committing to one person means surrendering all of the other imaginary relationships that you did or could have had. Living in one place means losing the life that you might have built somewhere else. And that creates grief even when the decision is correct. When I left my old job to pursue a completely different career, I knew I wanted that change. I'd thought about it for years, but when the time finally came, I still grieved the decision. I grieved the job that I was losing, the career path that I was was creating for myself the years before that. And that was really surprising for me. I remember talking to people about it, like, why do I feel this loss? I think part of me assumed that if the decision was right, then I should feel nothing but excitement and relief. But I felt the loss of that life that I had spent years building. And I was leaving behind people and all of these skills and routines and the status that I thought that I had in this position that I was in with the company, and a version of myself that I completely understood. But that grief didn't mean that I chose incorrectly. It was the emotional price of making a real choice. And I think sometimes we experience that loss and we assume that it's a warning sign, like maybe I shouldn't go down that path. But maybe the discomfort is actually just what it feels like to close one door and walk through another. Indecision feels safer because it creates this illusion that we haven't given anything up. And it feels like we're standing in a hallway looking at all of the doors, trying to decide which one's open. But in reality, time is closing the doors while we stand there. There's an old saying that the road is filled with flat squirrels that couldn't make a decision. Obviously, a ridiculous image. But the point's pretty accurate. Refusing to move doesn't stop the world from moving around you. And I realize now that while I was debating whether to change careers, I wasn't remaining neutral. Every day that I waited, I continued to invest time and energy and reputation and identity into the career that I already had. The default option was gaining momentum. It was looking more like a permanent decision every day. I was also falling into something that I later learned was called the sunk cost fallacy. If you don't know, the sunk cost fallacy is our tendency to keep investing in something because of what we've already put into it, even when walking away might be better for us. Maybe you spent years building a career, maybe you put a lot of money into a business or invested a decade into a relationship. Those costs begin to feel like reasons to continue. Walking away can make it seem like all that time and the money or the effort, it was just wasted. But past costs are gone either way. No matter what we do, staying longer doesn't bring them back. So I think a more useful question is, knowing what I know today, would I still choose this path? And that question doesn't automatically tell you to leave. Some things are worth repairing, and difficult seasons are going to happen, and some of them are worth enduring. But it forces you to evaluate the future instead of using the past to make decisions for you. Once I seriously considered leaving my career, I tried to answer every possible question before I moved. Would I enjoy the new work? Could I handle the danger involved with the new career? Would I regret giving up this position that I'm in? Would I feel behind professionally, like pushing 30 years old, completely changing my career path? What if I changed my mind years later and I feel like I couldn't stay in that career, that new career, and I'm starting over again? Those felt like reasonable questions. The problem was that some of them, they were impossible to answer from where I was standing. Some questions can't be answered through more thinking. They have to be answered by living the decision that you make. You can research a new career, you can talk to people, you can watch videos, you can make lists of all of the pros and cons, but no amount of research can fully tell you how you'll feel when you're doing the work. At some point, the action has to create the information that thinking can't. That doesn't necessarily mean making a reckless, irreversible decision. Action can mean submitting the application, taking a class, publishing a video, having an uncomfortable conversation, or trying the smallest real version of the thing that you keep imagining. I mean, I know I took a lot of small steps into the new career path before I just burned everything and went to the new career. When I finally changed careers, the path was a lot less intense than I had imagined it. From a distance, it felt like one enormous life altering event, but living it was really just like a series of ordinary steps that are just taken during the day. I filled out an application and then I waited and I got a response and then I showed up to the interview and then there was a day that I had to do a test and then the training and these things just they it when you sit there and you think about it, it feels like this huge life-changing decision, but the actual steps are mostly just Monday and then Tuesday and then Wednesday. I love the quote by Seneca that says we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That doesn't mean that nothing bad will happen, but at least in my experience, the thing that I feared was way smaller than all of the fear that I created for myself in my head because I was experiencing like every possible way to fail in this new career path at the same time. I was imagining embarrassment and getting in a bad financial spot, regret of not being able to like go back to my old position, or the criticism from everyone at the company that I was at for making the change, the disappointment. What if I got the job and it wasn't anything like I thought it was? And honestly, I just kept thinking about this future version of myself that just realized that I made a decision that destroyed my entire life, basically. And we call all of that imagination careful planning. To reference somebody else that has a great idea about this, Stephen Pressfield has this idea of resistance. He wrote a book called The War of Art, and he describes resistance as the internal force that appears whenever we move toward something meaningful. What makes resistance dangerous is that it rarely sounds evil or cowardly. It sounds intelligent and it uses our own intelligence against us. It says things like, you already have a good job. Other people would kill to be in your position. You need to be completely certain before making a change. Now isn't the right time. You can always do it later. And those thoughts might contain some bit of truth. That's why they're persuasive. But resistance doesn't usually tell you to abandon your dreams forever. It just tells you, wait until tomorrow. Wait until tomorrow. And if it can win that argument every day, it never has to convince you of anything bigger. Another way resistance keeps us stuck is by turning identity into a prerequisite. We tell ourselves things like, is this really who I am? Am I the type of person that can do this new job? Am I a writer? Am I the leader? Am I the type of person who could start completely over at this point in my life? And we think that we have to discover all of these answers before we do anything. But honestly, I think that's completely backwards. Usually we make a choice, we endure the cost of making that choice, we repeat it, and eventually become a new type of person. And that person is the type of person who did the thing. You don't become a writer and then begin writing. You start writing, and it's usually pretty bad at first, and then you slowly become a writer. You don't become courageous and then make a difficult decision. You make the decision while you're still afraid, and afterward you have evidence that you can act courageously. And we think that confidence is what allows us to decide and make these decisions, but a lot of the time deciding is what eventually gives us the confidence. And yeah, acting creates a new problem. It makes us visible. If you never hit publish, nobody can tell you your work is bad. If you never lead, nobody can criticize your judgment. If you never change careers, nobody can watch you struggle as a beginner, maybe in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. If you never state what you believe, nobody can tell you that you're wrong. Potential is comfortable because it can't be disproven. I remember being told all the time growing up that I have so much potential, but when the rubber met the road, it became pretty difficult because you can always just sit in that area of, oh, he has so much potential. That in itself is this social reward. But if you start trying to make it happen, then you start thinking, what if I fail? What if everybody was wrong this entire time? I'd rather just be the person who has so much potential. As long as the project remains inside your head, it can still be perfect. And the business could have succeeded. The book could have been great. The career change could have worked. You just never really gave reality the chance to test it. And the moment that you act, you start working on the thing, your ability becomes visible, and you probably are going to look stupid, and someone's going to criticize you. You might discover that you aren't as naturally talented as you hoped. You might fail completely. But even failure gives you something that indecision can't, an answer. There's the regret of choosing something and watching it fail, and then there's the regret of never finding out who you could have become. The first regret is concrete, though. You know what happened, you can learn from it, you can adjust, you carry forward. The second regret is unfortunately something that the majority of people say on their deathbed, like, I wish I would have taken more chances. I wish I would have risked it more. I wish I would have done the thing that I was thinking about doing, because now that I'm on my deathbed, I realize that none of that other stuff mattered. Like, I want to go back. I want to face humiliation. I want to put myself out there, because now that I'm here, I wish I would have done it. I don't think the answer is to make every decision quickly. You probably shouldn't. Some decisions deserve patience, and sometimes you really do need more information. Sometimes waiting is the responsible choice, but eventually, thinking stops being preparation and it becomes a place to hide. At some point, you have to ask yourself, am I still learning something useful? Or am I hoping that one more day of thinking will remove the emotional risk of choosing? There may never be an option that doesn't require you to give something up. That's literally what it means to decide. That's what we said earlier. You choose what you're willing to lose. You accept responsibility for what follows. You accept that other people may question it. And then you let reality test you. And then you begin to find out who that decision allows you to become. Thank you guys for watching another one of my videos. It is about midnight over here where I'm at right now. I do work night shifts, so this is my little days off night shift project. I really like making these videos. If you enjoy listening, I actually really appreciate comments. I switch over to this YouTube channel on my phone and look at my notifications, and when I see a comment, I'm like, heck yeah, go, and I reply immediately. So if you would leave a comment, let me know what you think. I'll also take criticisms if you want. I'm not looking to blow up this YouTube channel. I actually did social media marketing for several years in my last company. I know all about keyword research and thumbnails and title optimization and all of that. I'm not doing any of that. I'm putting my thoughts into basically a voice memo here, recording gameplay, and just posting it. So I'd love to have actual conversations with you guys in the comments. If you want to continue to watch these videos, you can subscribe, you can turn on the notification bell, whatever you please. If I wasted your time, then I'm sorry. You don't have to watch another one of these. That is your decision. Have a great day.